G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. Nice to see you again. So in today's episode or today's video, I'm going to answer some questions I get asked all the time about living in the Philippines. As you guys know, I'm Australian. I've lived here for 10 years full time. I've been coming to the Philippines for 20 years. So there's lots of things that people want to know about the Philippines. So we'll get into those questions and I'll give you my honest opinion about what happens. So let's get started. First question I get asked all the time. I get emails about this, I get comments about this all the time. Why the Philippines and why did I come to the Philippines? So the majority of people who are foreigners who come to the Philippines are looking for one, a wife, that's about it, or two, they have relatives who already live here, or they're from a Filipino and foreign marriage. So they want to come back and see where their mother or father comes from. So in my personal circumstance, I was 27, I was married at the time. My wife was having an affair. I lost everything to my ex-wife. I lost my house, I lost all the cars, I lost everything. So I was in a situation where I was 27 years old, I didn't have any children, and in Australia, that sort of age, it's pretty rare to find a single woman who just doesn't have children. So I just made a decision that I wanted to go somewhere where it could be possible to find someone who didn't have children. So it was a process, okay? It was Korea or Vietnam or Thailand or the Philippines, and what really pushed me over the edge is the English. So if you go to Thailand, for example, not many people speak English at all, even in like basic situations like hotels or even tourist spots. Lots of people can't speak like good English. But the Philippines, everyone speaks English at some sort of level, and I just really like the attitude of the Philippine people. They're always smiling, no matter what their situation, whatever circumstance they're in, they're always happy, always having a great time. And so that's what finally pushed me over. Of course, I met someone and then had children with them. For the first 10 years, I was still working in Australia, so I was doing like 6 months at a time in each country. Sometimes I do longer, sometimes I do less. So I might do like 1 year in Australia, save up enough money and then live here for 2 years, and then go back and then do 6 months, come back for 6 months, that sort of thing. But that was the situation for the first 10 years. And then I got married 7 years ago, and I decided to live full-time in the Philippines. Let's have a look at our next question, probably the most popular one, driving in the Philippines. So it's different, but not so much different to any other country, as long as you obey the rules. My golden rule is just don't hit anything or anyone, and you'll be alright. A little bit different from me, I'm from Australia, we drive on the left. Here we drive on the right, so that took a couple of weeks to get used to. The rules can be a little bit different in some places, but generally there's no speed limit because there's so much traffic here, you don't have to worry about speed. You do have to worry about police, but that is changing as well. Driving here 20 years ago, there was a lot of corruption in the police. They just pull you over, you have to give them a bribe, whatever. With licenses, if you've got an American license, Australian license, Canadian license, you can drive up to 6 months before you have to get a license, and you only have to get a license if you're a resident, like I am. It's a little bit different driving because you're not doing speed. Like if you're in America or Australia or England, you're looking ahead more because you're doing speed. Here, you tend to use your mirrors more. You're looking beside you for motorcycles or motorcycles. You're looking behind you just to make sure that everything is around is fine. So yeah, you tend to spend more time looking backwards than you do forward, which seems a bit strange. And again, like, you can get away with a lot here. You don't indicate, it's not a big issue. You can sit in the middle of lanes, that sort of stuff. Manual cars or stick shift cars are the most common cars here. It's pretty rare to see an automatic. So both of my cars are manual, so that's something that you do have to think about. The biggest thing with driving in any country is when you're not from that country, where the hell are you? There's lots and lots of streets in Manila. It can get a bit confusing. They also have like lots of spaghetti highways, which is, you know, this one goes this way, this one goes straight, this one goes this way, and then underneath, and then this one goes that way. So it can get a bit confusing, so a sat nav is always helpful. I'm pretty good around Manila now. After a long time driving here, I don't use Waze or Google Maps or anything anymore. I know where I am. But there are still some places in Manila that I've never driven to. That's when I'll use a sat nav. But basically it's the same as driving anywhere. Just try not to have an accident. They've got some strange laws in the Philippines. The biggest vehicle is at fault, even if the vehicle is not at fault. So you might be stopped and a motorcycle can run up your ass and it's your fault. Okay, that's the law here. So there's lots of cases where truck drivers haven't done nothing wrong. They end up going to jail for whatever reason, just because they're in the bigger vehicle. So yeah, there's a couple of different things, but generally if you obey the rules, just like everywhere. Good thing in the Philippines, most of the rules, the signs, are all in English, so you don't have a problem. So if you're an American coming here, please try driving. It's just the same as you would be used to. It's just slower, and you've just got to be more wary about what's happening around you. Question is, what are Filipino women like? So my father says that women are the same no matter what country they come from, and I tend to agree with him. So if you think that you can come to the Philippines and that you can treat your girlfriend or wife differently than you would in any other country, no. Okay, so they have feelings, they're women just like you would be used to. A little bit different culturally. They definitely try to look after their partner a lot more than you're probably used to in the West, but they also want that same attention back. So if you think you can come here and have a girlfriend and have girlfriends on the side, it's just going to turn into a shit show, which is probably one of the biggest problems that foreigners face here, because there is a lot of temptation. There is a lot of girl diggers, I suppose, that are looking for a foreigner. But on the whole, 90% of the women here are really great women. Conversations can be a little bit awkward at some point. Majority of Filipino women, particularly in the provinces, aren't exactly what you call educated, or not educated to the standards that you probably expect from in the West. So, you know, if you want to have a discussion about World War II or about how Hitler impacted the genocide or the Holocaust or something like that, you'll be wasting your time. Okay, that's not something that they've been taught, it's not something that they're interested in. So yeah, it's exactly the same as what you'd expect anywhere, but generally on the whole, they're pretty decent. Culturally, there can be some problems with family members. Okay, I've been in a couple of situations where it's not just your girlfriend that you're supporting the entire family, and that entire family can extend out to extended families, uncles, aunts, cousins, everything like that. So that's something that you have to keep under control. because culturally here that's something that is expected. So that if the oldest daughter or son is expected to look after the whole family. So that can cause a few problems for foreigners. We're not used to that. We're not used to looking after our parents and thus those sorts of things where we're more used to our parents actually supporting us. That can be a cultural difference. Also, language barriers can be an issue. Okay, I'm from Australia. I swear a lot, so sometimes my wife gets offended because I'm saying something that's pretty basic to me, but it comes across as coarse or comes across as abrasive to her. But she's known me for 20 years, so she's used to that. She's even got an Australian accent. But generally, like I said, on the whole, they're pretty decent women. Like all Filipinos, they're all decent people. Okay, next one I've got is crime. Okay, there's a misconception that the Philippines is a violent country, which is simply not true. In the 20 years that I've been coming to the Philippines, I have never, ever, ever seen one fight on the street between Filipinos. Not one. But I have seen about 10 fights between drunk foreigners. Okay, in Makati, out in the street. That's the only time I've ever seen violence. Of course, there has been some issues in the last 6 years with drug-related violence. Again, I have never seen that. It is definitely happening. It happened. It's been reported on that, you know, there were a lot of unjudicial killings in the Philippines, but like I said, I have never seen that. Generally, you go to a nightclub, it's peaceful, it's totally opposite to what happens in Australia. Come at Australia, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at a nightclub, it's just fight after fight after fight. Stealing, very rare. There are instances where foreigners get attacked or something like that. That's just like anywhere in the world. Just be sensible, you know. If you're out at 2 o'clock in the morning and you want to go to the ATM machine, well, be wary because there's people watching you. But again, I've known a lot of foreigners here who have never had a problem, but I have known a couple. The other thing about being a foreigner here and crime, you just got to be wary about it. Okay, the kids on the street sometimes try to, you know, steal your wallet or something like that. But if you do the right thing, or you know, buy them a hamburger, then you wouldn't have a problem ever again. And they'll remember next time that you come back to the place where you were, they'll be looking after you instead of the other way. So yeah, just keep an eye on that sort of stuff. Try not to argue. Arguing is a big no-no in the Philippines. Okay, it's a hard thing for us to understand because we're used to complaining about certain things like services or what's going on, and it can be a bit like that at times. But yeah, just don't piss off the local people, and they'll be the ones who care about you. I've been in a lot of dodgy situations, but because I've spent time with some people or bought them a beer or bought some food and bought a pizza or something like that, they're the ones who are actually watching out for you. So that's what you should do, and that's what I suggest you should do. Next question, working in the Philippines. Working in the Philippines as a foreigner can be quite tough. The easiest and best way is that you've already got the job and that you've been transferred here from another country. So lots of foreigners here have lived in their own country, then been transferred over to the Philippines. That's the best way because you've got a secure job. If you're not in that situation, well then what are your skills? Okay, are you in demand in your own country? If you're in demand in your own country, there's a good chance that you're in demand here. If you do get a job, you can expect to be paid twice as much, up to 3 times more than a local person, which can create its own problems. Sometimes you get a little bit of regretment from the people that you're working with, but they also understand that as well. For my personal situation, I'm a boilermaker, so there's no opportunities for boilermaking in the Philippines. I can do it, but I'm not going to work for $10 a day. And why would they employ a foreigner when someone else can do exactly the same skill level as me? So I've had to reinvent myself. I've got a little small business of laser engraving, making some small boxes and knickknacks, that sort of stuff. But my main income is from teaching English. There are lots of opportunities to teach online, but not in the Philippines. In fact, it's teaching Japanese, Korean, Chinese, not so much China anymore, European countries. So if you do want to immigrate to the Philippines, I suggest that you get some sort of TESOL or TEFOL certificate so that you can at least earn some money in the Philippines. As to just an ordinary job, yeah, you could probably get one, but again, travel, traffic, to earn 20,000 pesos, 400 or 500 pesos a month. If you're quite willing to do that, there's lots of jobs out there. Also, I don't speak Tagalog. I have a sort of understanding of Tagalog. I understand what's being said, but I can't communicate in it. That's a big, major hindrance. Every time I've gone for a job where I think I'm qualified, the first thing they say is, "Can you speak Tagalog?" And I have to say no. So anyway, make sure that you've got it prepared for that. Also, business. Okay, business is a lot different in the Philippines. A lot of foreigners come here, spend a lot of money on business, and then it fails in the first 6 months. Like most businesses, even in the West, 1/3 of them go broke after 6 months. There's no difference here. The only difference is that as soon as you set up your business and it might be successful, next week there'll be 15 of them on the same street, because Filipinos see that it's successful and they will start one up themselves doing exactly the same as what you do. So you have to be aware that if you can't run a business in your own country, don't expect that you can run one here. Okay, a lot of red tape. You have to understand all the rules and taxes and permits and all that sort of stuff. So don't come here with an illusion that you can start a pig farm. Okay, because there's already lots and lots of pig farms, and they know everything and they know who to sell to, and you don't. So yeah, if you've got a good business idea, no problems. But yeah, if you've got business acumen in your own country, well then you've got some chance here. Next question is, what's it like living in Manila? So that's a bit of a broad question. I like Manila. I always have. It's a vibrant city. It's a 24/7 city. Lots going on, people everywhere. No matter where you go, there's people constantly doing something, to the point where you go, where the hell do all these people come from? Cost of living in Manila has definitely gone up in the last 3 years. Like the inflation rate in most countries at the moment after the pandemic, it's hit here as well. Grocery prices have definitely gone up about 7%. Petrol's gone up 20 pesos. Registration of the car, tyres, everything has increased in price. Electricity and rent as well. So I'll try to give you a bit of an idea about how much the cost of living is here, so that if you do come to a place like Manila, how much it's going to cost you. If you go out further into the provinces, of course it's going to go down. Okay, provinces are a lot cheaper, but you don't have the amenities, you don't have the lifestyle, that sort of stuff. So if you're expecting to come and live in the middle of Makati, which is the CBD of Manila, okay, that's about twice as expensive as somewhere else. So in lots of opportunities that you just move a couple of blocks out of Makati, you can save like 20-30% on basic stuff like rent, food, electricity, that sort of stuff. I live about an hour out of Manila. I live in Navota City. I'm lucky, I'm married to my wife. She has her own house, and so we don't have to pay for any rent or anything like that. We just have to pay for our expenses, our electricity, water, that sort of stuff. So our electricity bill at the moment with air conditioning is going um, pretty much all day because it's so fucking hot here. It's about $350 per month for electricity. Water you have to pay for, quite cheap. It's about $20 a month, which is nothing outrageous. Food can be expensive. I'll talk about food later, but we tend to buy more Western food than Filipino food, so you have an excess on top of that, just because of my taste buds. So I might buy something that most Filipinos wouldn't buy, like jam or butter or something like that. So at the moment, it's about 20,000 to 25,000 for our groceries. That's for myself, my wife, my mother-in-law, and our two kids. Okay, but that's milk and stuff like most things that most Filipinos would eat. So all in all, it's about 35 to 40,000 pesos, which is 800 US per month, and we don't pay rent. So if you are paying rent, depending on your income, again, some people earn good money here, you can afford the fancy places in Makati. Most of them are about 50, 60, 70,000 per month in rent, $2,000, which is still quite good. That'd be a nice 2-bedroom apartment right in the center of the CBD. If you go another 10 minutes out, you can expect to save about 10,000 on that, 30,000. You might get an extra room. If you want to go even further out, say 20 minutes out, you'll get a pretty decent place for about 20,000. If you want to live like a local and you just want a 1-bedroom studio, you can go down to 15,000 a month, which is only 250 US dollars, which is quite cheap. But don't expect too much. Expect that you'll have to put in your own hot water system, and you have to buy your own fridge and all that sort of stuff. TV, you have to get your internet connected, all those sorts of things. So yeah, but anyway, that's something that is depending on your own situation and depending on what you actually expect. Next one is language barrier. So again, depends on where you are. Philippines is divided up into educated, uneducated people. Educated people have very good English. Uneducated people have basic English. But most know all the basic sentence phrases for English. So as you travel around the Philippines, you'll be in different provinces. Some are better than others. But like I said, you can always be able to talk to someone who will understand what you're talking about. As I said in the first part of this video, that's one of the reasons why I like the Philippines. Even if you're in the middle of nowhere and at the back streets or in the middle of nothing, there will be someone that you can go up to and say, how do I get here, or something. They'll understand you. They won't be necessarily be able to answer you, but they will understand you. Couple of language barriers. Tagalog is quite a difficult language to listen to understand. It's hard to pick up on. Filipinos talk very quickly, just like we do in English. So sometimes you'll just hear okay, and it's also, there's a lot of slang in Tagalog that we don't understand or you didn't learn in your book. Also, there's lots and lots of dialects. So if you go to Cebu, okay, in the main tourist areas, people speak English, but most people in Cebu don't even speak Tagalog, they speak Cebuano. So there's lots of their own dialects. Um, go around the
Why do you
country,
think, sir,
you'll
our
be confronted with
Philippine failed to
different
qualify for the FIFA
sounds
World
all
Cup?
the time. But
There
on the
are
most part,
a lot of factors that
people here have
is
very
the
good
Filipinos are
English.
not
The
yet
only
developed,
thing
no?
like I've always
That
had a
is
problem with
for
is the word
myself.
fuck. Okay, so in Australia, that's not an offensive word. It's used as an adjective. It's used as an expression. Here, okay, they don't understand that or they don't hear that. So yeah, you've got to be careful with your language sometimes, your native language. So over the last 10 years, um, so even I can hear in myself, my Australian accent has changed a lot, not only because I teach, so you've got to have a more a softer accent. But as soon as I go home, I'm back to "G'day, mate, how are you?" You know, that sort of accent. So
What do you think
that's
should
another
our
thing you
Philippine
might have to
government
do.
do
So if
or
you've got an
agency do in
accent,
order
that
for
you
them
might have
to
to
be
soften that
included in
up a bit and
international
speak more
competitions in the
the Queen's
future?
English, maybe.
For what I
But
think,
apart from that, yeah,
they
generally not
they
really
should
any
do
sort of barrier.
more practice.
Okay, next one, food. Food in the Philippines. I've got some pretty strong views on the food in the Philippines. I'm not a big Filipino food lover. Okay, I've always struggled with the food here. There are some very nice dishes, but there's lots of things that you do miss as a foreigner. Just simple stuff, cheese. You know, if you buy cheese, you pay extra for it, and it's still not the best. So you have to be very proactive about it. Like milk, I know exactly where I can buy some actual cow's milk from New Zealand, cheese from Australia, jams, biscuits, the things that we're kind of used to. Bread is a big problem here. Okay, they have American style bread, which is not American style bread. They just call it American style, and it's like a sugary, loafy thing. It's not very nice. It's never fresh. So that's a problem that I always struggle with, finding fresh bread. Again, if you do find it, you have to pay for it. Milk is getting better. You can get imported milk, so I've always had my kids on milk. That's one of the deficiencies here in the Philippines. My kids always had great teeth, and they're big and strong, taller, and all that sort of stuff because they've always had milk since they've been babies. Meat can be an issue, but that's getting better and better as well. There's more butcher shops that are actually importing meat. Majority of meat here is baboy or pork, which is nice. There's nothing wrong with that. Chickens are fine. Excuse me, there's two different types of chickens here. There's like the ones that we're used to, the bigger ones, and then there's a native chicken. So it all depends on where you are and what you expect. Food on the street is cheap, so there's nothing saying that you can't go down and get a meal for $1. You definitely can. I actually quite enjoy it. There's lots of little calderias, and they'll sell you like some rice, a couple of pieces of bacon, an egg, and it'll cost you like 65 pesos. Get a drink, maybe 100 pesos. I don't mind them for lunch, but it's pretty basic stuff. Restaurants are pretty cheap here as well. If you come from Australia, we're pretty rare to eat out at a restaurant ever. Okay, you'd only do it for a birthday or you do it for a special occasion, something like that. Here, you can do it. If you've got income coming in, you can go out every single night. It's not going to cost you very much, maybe $20 for a family, and that'd be more food than you can eat. The food in general is, you've got to get used to it. Okay, everything comes with rice. I'm not a big rice eater, so that takes away half the cuisine for me. I have my specialty dishes that I actually enjoy. Okay, but on the whole, it can be a bit of a struggle. For the last 10 years, I've gone from 75 kilos down to 65 kilos. So that's because I'm always struggling to find something that's appetizing. But that's my general opinion, okay? You might like it. If you're used to Asian food, no problems maybe. But it's another thing that I get asked a lot is that people who have never been to Asia, they turn around and go, oh wow, Philippine food must be amazing, Asia, because they're thinking of Indonesia or Thailand or Vietnam. Totally different, okay? Filipino food's very influenced by Western societies. Their biggest fast food chain here is Jollibee, which is absolutely disgusting. Okay, I wouldn't feed it to my dogs, but it's huge here. So yeah, if you're expecting like an amazing Indian or an amazing Thai experience or something like that, you can get them here. If you go to a Thai restaurant or Indian restaurant, you'll definitely get that. But I always say to people, have a look in your local phone book and see how many Filipino restaurants you have at home. How many Filipino restaurants are there in America? How many are in Australia? And you'll be surprised, there's none. But if then you go, how many Thai restaurants are there? There's a Thai restaurant or a Chinese restaurant or a Vietnamese restaurant or an Indonesian restaurant or a Spanish restaurant on pretty much every corner. Yeah, that's the difference. But yeah, anyway, that's the food. Next question, cultural differences are huge. Okay, so you're white for a start. If you're a foreigner, you can be any colour, you're still foreign to them. To the local people, they know who you are. Okay, so they treat you differently. My wife calls it white power or foreign power. So if we're in a situation, she'll say, come on, use your white power and get something done. So there definitely is, you get treated at a higher level, even though you shouldn't be. So expect that, expect to be spoken onto the street a lot. Okay, here, everyone is Americano, even if you're not Americano. So you'll hear, hey Joe, everywhere, particularly as you go out into the provinces. So you have to get used to that. Sometimes it feels like you're in a movie. People just stare at you. Kids will come up and just touch your hair or something like that. Or always talking to you. People across the street, where are you going, Joe? What are you doing, Joe? You know, that can sometimes take a little bit to get used to. Also, there's another thing that a white man with a Filipino wife, okay, is looked down upon almost, like my wife's a prostitute. So that's something that your wife has to deal with as well. Okay, so she's fine with it now, but for the first couple of years of us being together, she would always complain about it or yell at people on the street. She could hear people talk about her behind her back as she's walking past with me. So that's something that you have to think about. And the same with my children. Okay, I've got two daughters, they're growing up. My 11-year-old is nearly the same height as me. So even just as simple as walking down the street with my daughter, they'll look at me like, who's this guy with that very young girl? Something that you have to be wary of. My father, okay, when my father and my mother come to visit and my father's with my wife, okay, on the street, that's considered that they're married. So that's something that's unusual to have to deal with, even when I'm with my mother-in-law. So my mother-in-law is 70, 67 or something like that, and I look older than I am. I'm 45, but because I'm grey and I look older, so you'll hear they'll ask me Asawa, and they're talking about my mother-in-law. So because that's an unusual thing to see here, it would be unusual to see a younger man with an older woman, particularly a Kano. So yeah, there are some differences that you have to think about. You do get better treatment, of course. Okay, service is better for Americanos. The simple things like catching a jeepney, people will be surprised. Don't be surprised if people are taking a video of you. Don't be surprised if people come up and ask if they can take a photo with you. Don't be surprised if they just come up and ask you questions. Okay, that's going to happen. Also, because you're a foreigner, you're going to attract people on the street. Okay, it's pretty common to be a Pied Piper here. You'll have kids follow you, asking for money, asking for different things. Okay, again, it's about being in control. Okay, be polite. You know, if you're in an area where you shouldn't be, and you've got 20 kids around you, buy them all an ice cream. Okay, that will take all the tension out of the situation, make you feel better. If you're driving in the middle of the provinces or something like that, your car breaks down, sit down, buy everyone a beer, okay? And then they'll sort everything out for you. They'll get the car fixed, they'll get the tyre fixed, they'll do something. Just sit down with the people for a couple of hours, buy them beer, give them some cigarettes, that sort of stuff. And anyway, you'll get used to that. Okay, next one is government agencies. Okay, government agencies here have improved out of sight. So if you came here 20 years ago, they were absolutely terrible, they were disorganised, they were rude, they didn't know anything, they'd tell you one thing and then the next day they'll tell you another thing. They didn't even know their own laws. Okay, nothing worked, there was no computer system, most things were done on a typewriter. So I'll give you an example. Just when I registered the kid's birth, everything was written out on an old typewriter. So they don't have any like centralised system where everything is computerised. And, you know, if you get a license, it's also related to your tax or something like that. It's none of that, even today. But they have improved a lot, particularly immigration. Immigration used to be an absolute nightmare. Now it's organised. You go in there, they've got windows, and they tell you exactly what to do. Give you a ticket, gate 1, go there, gate 1, go to gate 14, go to 14, fill out this form. Really organised now. So I'm pretty sure, it's been a long time since I've been a tourist in the Philippines, but most countries get 21 days automatic. So if you come in, you don't even have to get a visa, you can just arrive and they'll give it to you immediately. Last time I came through the airport, they didn't even have any immigration officers at the airport, so I'm not too sure what it is, but just check in your own country. The biggest problem is a lot of air carriers won't let you on the plane unless you do have a visa, so that's what you do have to check. I've been stopped a couple of times coming from Australia to the Philippines and they say, you don't have a visa, and I say, I don't need one. And they say, well, we can't let you on the plane because you need to have a visa to be returned. So best thing is just to make sure that your flights correspond. So if you've only got 21 days, just say, look, I'm going there for 21 days, this is my return flight. Then they'll let you on. But yeah, just check with your airline. To live here, it's a process just like anywhere else, any other country. It took about 5 years, I think, for me to become a permanent resident after getting married. Similar processes that you would have in any other country. Okay, you've got to be vetted, You've got to make sure that your relationship is genuine. You've got to pay the money. It's quite cheap, of course. It's not like the other way where it's quite expensive. To come here is quite cheap. Yeah, you've got to go in and do interviews and make sure you dot the I's and cross the T's, that sort of stuff. But all those immigration policies. You can overstay in the Philippines, no problems. So if you come to the Philippines and you're in the province and you like it, you want to stay an extra month. There's no offices there. You just come back. You pay the late fees or something like that. There'll be an extra fee or something that you pay. But yeah, you won't be black banned or something. I knew an American guy that had overstayed for 25 years, and he had to go home for his mother's funeral, and he had to pay like $30,000 in late fees, and he was fine. He just paid it and went home and come back. So yeah, there's nothing there. If you get involved with the law, that can be a little bit different. They have the right to black ban you. They try not to get arrested or try not to go to jail or something like that. They can be inflicted, put onto your visa applications, that sort of stuff. So just be careful with that. Try to keep away from the police as much as possible. Okay, there's some bad ones. But anyway, yeah, quite similar immigration process to anywhere else in the world. Just check if you're coming here to make sure that you need a visa or whether you don't. Just go onto your country's website. You'll see if you do go on your own country's website, they'll have warnings. So if you read the Australian government warnings about the Philippines, it's about 100,000 pages long about don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. It's all bullshit. Okay, the Philippines is one of the most peaceful countries in the world. Of course, don't go down to Mindanao where there's a war zone going on there. Of course, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that in any country. And if you did, well, then you're asking for trouble. Anyway, well done. Good luck. Alright, next one is people who got kids. Okay, like I do. Education is totally different here. Okay, so I'm going through this with my two girls at the moment. I've been in about 4 schools already, I think. I've transferred them a couple of times. Alright, first school was terrible. Okay, they weren't getting taught anything, and then I transferred them to a public school, which is quite good. Then I transferred them to a private school, and I wasn't happy with after the pandemic hit, I wasn't happy with their online teaching, so I took them back out of that school and then put them into another public school, which I'm quite happy with. They seem to be learning a lot. It's quite interesting to see their materials. Okay, up until grade 2, everything is in Tagalog, and after that, everything is in English, which is good. That's why the majority of Filipinos speak good English, because their whole schooling is done in English. Quite impressed with their science and mathematics curriculum. Okay, they also learn Tagalog, family values, home economics, that sort of stuff. But yeah, the schooling's quite good, and it's free, of course. Okay, public school, just like anywhere else. So that's good. Gets a little bit different in college as they get into the higher education. There's a lot of perception about here that if you go to a better university, better college, you can just get a better job. That's the way that it works. Filipinos works on a caste system, just like in a lot of Asian countries. Okay, the more educated you are, the higher you're looked up upon, even if you're not. And then you get to that point where you get these higher educated people look down at everyone else. And that's something that I don't like particularly. But yeah, so expect that once your kids grow up, it could be quite expensive. You're going up to maybe $1,000 a year for their university costs. But it's a price you have to pay here if you want your kids to be successful and get more opportunities. send them to the best colleges and universities. Even if they're no good, doesn't matter. Just make sure they got that certificate and they'll be fine. Okay, this will be my last one, hopefully. Okay, biggest mistakes that can be made. I did that for me or that for everyone. So, probably what I've noticed about foreigners who live here for a couple of years and that they get jaded. It's too much for them. They can't adapt to the way that the things happen in the Philippines. So if you think that you're going to come to the Philippines and change the way society works, you're in for a rude shock. Okay, if you can't handle the fact that you get fucked around at immigration or go down and register your car and it takes 5 hours and you've got to stand in line and then you get told something by one person and then they tell you something different. They send you over to buy this or pay that or miscellaneous fees. That's just the way the world works here. Okay, so you've got to get used to that. You've got to get used to the rules. Everyone obeys the rules. Everyone's social about that. Okay, so you'll be in yourself some situations and you'll go, this is just ridiculous, but that's the way that the Philippines work. So a lot of guys, a lot of people get jaded about that. Women, okay, a lot of guys come over here and get ripped off by girls, find out that they're married or find out that they've got kids, they've been sending them money. So that's your own problem. You just have to be wary about that. I've been in that situation and found out and just get out of that situation. So yeah, pick the right one. Don't change your attitude just because you're in a different country. Okay, if you're 70 years old and you're in America and there's an 18-year-old, well, you're going to have to pay for it. Same here. So there's lots of guys that get caught. They send money or they spend money to build a house and all that sort of stuff. Well, that's another thing. Foreigners can't own land in the Philippines, so you have to be careful about that. Building a house, it has to go into your girlfriend's name or your wife's name, so she will own it. Okay, there's lots of horror stories about someone spending $100,000 on a house and then next week it's fucking gone. They go to court over it, and the judge is the girlfriend's uncle. Yeah. There's no surveying in the Philippines either outside of the big cities. So in the province, there's no maps. There's no surveyors like in America where I own this and that and this and that and this is all defined and measured out. There's no such thing like that. They have a law where the local people say who owns it. So, if they say, oh no, this has been Mrs. Jones for the last 2,000 years, you don't own it, even if you paid money for it. So just be careful with that. The best, if you've got the money, buy yourself an apartment in Manila or one of the bigger cities. You actually own it, it's on a deed, you have control about what's going on there. Another thing is the family. Okay, so everyone has family issues when they come here. Okay, no matter what the status level is, the lower status, lowest caste. Okay, you just have to accept the fact that you're going to be supporting other people. It's just that simple. And if you don't do that, you're just putting pressure on your partner, and that's just going to cause resentment. I'm lucky, like I said, I'm pretty lucky with my wife. We don't have any of those issues too much. I do have some issues with my family-in-law, not so much my mother-in-law, but with her family. They do, treat me differently for some reason. But anyway, that's your own personal situation. Just be careful. A lot of guys come here with I want to help attitude. and they just get screwed over and screwed over and screwed over, and then they get cynical. You also got to have a plan. Like I said, think about what you're going to do, think about what options you have if everything turns to shit. I personally know a couple of guys that are stuck here now. They don't have enough money to redo their passport. They run away from America. They've got big tax problems in America, so they can't go back. Or they're running away from child maintenance or something like that. So make sure that you've got your house in order before you even come here. So if you're running away from, you know, something, you haven't paid for your kids in America for the last 20 years, okay, that's not a good start. So if you think you come here and then everything turns to shit, you can't get home, you've got no family, you've got no support group around you, well, then that is going to not turn out well. And then, if you're in that situation, the whole white privilege goes out the door. If you walk down the street and you're asking for money as a white person, they just laugh at you and probably spit on you. Okay, total different situation. I've seen, you know, a couple of Americans and foreigners that are stuck on the street and there's no help. And they're battling everyone all the time. But like I said, that's a personal decision that you have to get through. Just make sure that you've always got a plan to maybe get yourself out of here if you have to. Just one more thing, we just had an election. That's another thing to be wary about. Okay, try to keep your political opinions to yourself. Nothing wrong with asking other people how they voted or what they think or something like that. But try to keep it to yourself. You don't want to be involved in that. You can't vote anyway. So it's really something that happens in the periphery. But anyway, I hope this all helps. Good luck with everything. I hope that you do come here and try it. It's a lovely country with lovely people. I really enjoy it. I've even got a tattoo of the Philippines and the Philippine flag. So yeah, this is my home now. But anyway, please like and subscribe, leave some comments and questions down below, and I hopefully will answer them later. See you later.